Well, that's a interesting actually, in terms of people, which is why we're making the West Coast double track. Now, what happens at these levels is it's got to go to so I start so this is scenario 2, where this is like a little bubble here. So here, route service. And this route to our transit center at Temple, or the rapid service, or if you wanted to, this is an existing.
Okay, so you did Globe and Porter.
These again are representing so this area down here, that's our again,
So the security, everything is here.
just kick it off.
Okay.
Wade, are you ready? Good evening. My name is Trey Fletcher. I'm the Assistant City Manager with the City of Pflugerville. Welcome to our second Transit Development Plan Workshop here at the Justice Center. Tonight, what we hope to do for those that you have attended, and I appreciate your attendance tonight, is unveil some routes, some route concepts, some route possibilities, and introduce the potential or preliminary scope of costs, both operational and capital. All subject to change, predicated on the input of the community, input throughout the balance of this process. If you attended our first public meeting at the library, it was about what are you looking for? There were no maps. It was just kind of what are your needs? How can we meet your needs? How can we fulfill a transit system that is satisfactory to the community and is worth implementing? We have some transit supportive densities, but we don't have the node. You know, we're trying to get to other nodes such as downtown or UT. And so our emphasis preliminarily is on park and ride, but working with Capital Metro through this transit development process, we're also looking at the possibility of integrating a local route or a circulator. But there are costs associated with that, and if they don't pencil or don't have the ridership, it's something we might have to just postpone. But so the scenarios look at an A, if you will, of park and ride, to look at regional express routes to Austin. A B concept of local service, getting to other transit nodes such as the Red Line at Howard Station or Tech Ridge. And then scenarios associated with each of those as well. And so I appreciate your input tonight. Andrew Iddickson with AECOM is going to give you a brief presentation. Afterwards, we'll take your questions, and then we'll adjourn this workshop presentation. We'll resume the open house if you have more dialogue. We also have comment cards in the back. If there's a route that we talk about that you think it should deviate this way or something like that, feel free to pin that in. Also on the back is an opportunity for you to leave comments to qualify your position. There's always an option of not doing transit, but we think as we move forward, we need to be thinking about transit and those opportunities of our city as we grow. You may have seen the headline last week, 11th fastest growing city in the United States, above 50,000 people over the last, from 2014 to 2015. We don't see that trend changing anytime soon, and so it's something we need to anticipate as we try to fix congestion in our community and contribute to that solution in our region. So Michelle's going to go first. Michelle with Capital Metro. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Michelle Moe. I'm the Regional Coordination Planner at Capital Metro. And we've been working with the city for about 5 months now on this plan, and I'm just going to provide a little bit of history and how we got here before Andrew comes in and talks about the routes and financial portion. This thing is So why a transit plan now? Trey hit a little bit upon this, but as you can see, and I'm sure you experience it every day, Pflugerville is one of the fastest growing communities in Central Texas, 195% increase between 2000 and 2015. Another thing he mentioned, congestion. We're all battling it, and I'm sure you feel it in Pflugerville as well. Another is an opportunity to coordinate with other plans that are going on. There's the Pflugerville Master Plan, Transportation Master Plan, and then Capital Metro is updating its service plan. It's called Connections 2025. And so these things are going on simultaneously right now. And we're trying to feed in information between both plans as we move along. And then there's a board in the back on the Project Connect North Corridor Plan. That was completed between a few agencies, Capital Metro, Campo, Lone Star Rail, and it looked at high capacity transit in the region, rail and rapid bus lines, express service and things like that. So we're trying to tie in some of the findings for that into the local planning efforts. At Capital Metro, we updated our service expansion policy in 2014. It allowed for cost sharing of federal transit funds in the region, and so that's what's helping to assist with funding for these transit plans, and a portion of the funds can be used for service once it's implemented. I think this map is very telling about the situation in Pflugerville. Pflugerville is in the urbanized area, but not part of the Capital Metro service area. In order to be part of the Capital Metro service area, a city would need to commit 1% sales tax, and Pflugerville, like other cities in the region, is capped out on sales tax. So that's why we updated the service expansion policy to allow other options to participate, such as contracting for service. Another opportunity is with the Pflugerville ETJ, which is partially in the Capital Metro service area. There is currently no service in that area, but this portion was formerly part of Travis County Precinct 2. So along with why we're doing a transit plan right now, a lot of positive things come out of providing transit service. Provide more mobility options for your residents. It's a cost savings for commuters. One of the routes is an express service that is recommended. Riders get to ride on express service toll-free. There's Wi-Fi. There's lots of sort of positive things that improve quality of life whenever you have transit service. It's an amenity to attract new residents and employers to Pflugerville. A lot of folks are moving into Pflugerville that are used to having transit, and so they're asking, how can we get this in our city? So we've heard that a bit in the public outreach that we've done. And then economic development opportunities and the ability to promote just all those alternative modes of transportation, including bicycling and walking. So a transit development plan, it's basically a 3-year plan. It looks at opportunities to provide transit in an area. It identifies alternatives to consider, and it develops a service and financial plan, and that's the part that Andrew will speak about in a minute. We're working with some other cities in the region. The city of Georgetown, their plan is complete, and we've been working with council and city staff to present the plan to council. The plan recommends actually moving from demand response, a door-to-door service, to fixed route transit. And we're going to bring that to council for adoption, to consider adoption in June. The Buda Transit Development Plan was completed in the fall, and it was adopted May 17th. Hutto Transit Plan completed in the fall and adopted February 18th. And the interesting thing about the Hutto plan is that it does also recommend express service along the 130 corridor. So possible opportunities for partnerships in transit. We're always looking how we can work together. Coordination is best. And then Round Rock just completed a 10-year master plan. Capital Metro was a stakeholder in that process. And we're working with them on implementation options, and we're continuing to coordinate and be a stakeholder in that process. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Capital Metro is working on updating its service plan. It's called Connections 2025. The tasks of the TDP, it has a big public involvement component. We look at existing conditions in evaluating demographics, growth patterns, the way the community is just evolving, and as you know, it's happening very fast. There is a 3-year implementation plan that includes a service and operations plan, a financial plan, and then phases for implementation of that. And then we finally have a draft and transit development plan that will be considered for adoption by City Council. The schedule, we started back in January, and you can can see we're right at the end of this right now. This is our second public meeting. And after this, we'll use the input gathered to refine the draft transit plan. And so we're hoping to wrap this up by the end of June, actually. Next slide. The public outreach that we did, there was intercept surveys at Stonehill Town Center and the public library. And then we also did our first public meeting at the library as well. Trey and I went out to the Pflugerville Senior Luncheon and did intercept surveys there. I think we were very successful there. We had a lot of participation. Throughout the whole process, we worked with City of Pflugerville staff, kind of going back and forth on options and trying to react to what staff thought the city needed. One of the big successes in this plan is the online surveys, over 500 responses. Y'all beat out all the other cities. Sorry, sorry, Nat Wagner's in the back, he's with the city of Georgetown. And so that was really helpful in sort of assessing the needs in the city. And then Andrew and his team conducted several stakeholder meetings, the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Pflugerville Association, City of Round Rock Transportation, since they had just finished their transit plan. Drive a Senior, they provide volunteer transportation for seniors in the city, and they have proven to be a really good partner in other projects, and so they're a really good component to include in this. CARTS, they're the rural transit system, and they previously provided service in Pflugerville, and so they're very familiar with the community, and we thought they would be a good stakeholder in this process. The ISD, and then finally the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation. So what we heard from all of this public input, one more time. Basically that bus service to activity centers such as shopping in the city, HEB, Walmart, and Stonehill. High capacity transit service to Austin from a park and ride in Pflugerville. Connections to other cities in Austin. Connections to regional service that Capital Metro already runs, such as service from Tech Ridge and Howard Lane, the train station there. Service to medical offices, libraries, recreation centers, sort of those activity centers. And then service for transit dependent population and commuters really came up as a need. So right now, I'll hand it over to Andrew to talk about the analysis and the routes.
Great, thanks, Michelle. So I'm Andrew Dixon with AECOM, and we were part of the project team looking at the transit options. So there are kind of two ingredients that go into this plan. Right now there's no real existing transit service, so what we're looking at is a healthy dose from the public, the outreach that we did, getting an idea of where people want to go and what transit means to them and how it could help access and mobility in the community. But also there's a technical side, a technical analysis, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about, is that trying to get an understanding of where people are moving and the travel patterns here. So we looked at ridership data, we talked to Drive a Senior and kind of got an idea of where at least the seniors were trying to go within the community. And also talked to CARTS, where they used to have service here, and to get an understanding of when they were operating here, what are some of the areas and what were some of the origin destinations pairings that they had. Future growth patterns is, with the growth here, the interesting thing about growth is that sometimes the type of growth that occurs may not be the best for all types of transit. Certain types of growth work for park and ride type transit, where people may want to just drive to a location and take a bus in. And then more of the fixed route might need densities and other types of growth. So kind of looked at that and how Pflugerville is growing and what parts of the city are growing. Travel patterns of residents, and then we did a kind of a very comprehensive look at demographics, looking at those densities for population, employment, and where people currently, at least according to the census, that don't have access to a vehicle or a car, maybe where their concentration is too, and where transit could possibly benefit those populations. So this is just some examples here. This is kind of looking at some of the routing, but those purple spots there are multifamily complexes. You can just keep cycling, Taylor, thanks. These are just some examples of some of the demographics. These are large employers and commercial areas that were identified. This is population density that we looked at. The darker colors represent higher densities, although, you know, if you compare it to bigger cities, the densities overall are not as high, but just to kind of give relative terms and context of densities. And then the last one, which is really important, those purple lines represent the trail system, which is a big amenity, a big part of Pflugerville and what it has to offer. And so, you know, it's important for the first and last mile for people to be able to walk or ride to and from the bus, but also access from those trails to and from the bus, and how people can get to the trail system by bike and then get off the bus and ride somewhere within the community. And all of Capital Metro buses, and really probably almost all buses around the country now, have bike racks on the buses. So it would either accommodate 2 to 3 bikes, depending on the type of rack. So there is that option for the modal transition. Okay, next one. So this is an overview of the different scenarios. Trey kind of talked a little bit about that, sort of A, B, C. We have some maps I'm going to go through, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but the first one is the express service. Basically, there'll be a park and ride lot somewhere, has yet to be identified, but a park and ride lot somewhere in Pflugerville, and then with direct service nonstop to Austin, and basically using the fastest route. We're saying SH 130 right now to 290, but it could be sort of a dynamic thing where, you know, almost like using Google Maps and find the travel pattern and the route that's the fastest. This would be a weekday only service, and really during peak periods in the AM and PM to get you downtown. Scenario 2 is the express service plus the local bus route, which is connecting Stonehill to Tech Ridge and locations in between. This would be on a schedule, so it would operate every hour. So at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., something like that, you would be able to ride the bus and get within the community. This would be more of an all-day type service, and it would also operate weekdays and Saturdays. And then if you have, part of the FTA Federal Transit Administration guidelines, if you have a fixed route service, you need to have complimentary paratransit, which is for people who qualify, persons with disabilities, and seniors. And that you have to provide that sort of demand response service, that curb-to-curb service within 3/4 mile of the fixed route. So we'll show you kind of the boundaries of that service. So when you introduce fixed route, you also are introducing paratransit as well. And then finally on scenario 2, there's something called a flex route, and we'll get more into that in a minute. And then lastly, scenario 3 is the exact same thing as scenario 2, but we're adding in that connection from Pflugerville to the Metro rail station at Howard Lane. So here's a map of scenario 1. This is a little overwhelming because there's all these circles everywhere. But so I'll explain what the circles are. Basically, at this time, there is a desire or possibility to have some sort of transit center park and ride location. It could even be sort of a mixed use, yet to be identified. But if there was a park and ride lot that had that express bus, these are some potential locations where that could occur in these preliminary plans. So not every circle is going to have a park and ride lot. Most likely it would just be one of these circles would have a park and ride location. So it could be somewhere up in the 45-130 area. It could be around the Pflugerville Parkway, Pecan, downtown, or even Heather Wild and Pecan. So just some potential locations, but the point of this is if there is a park and ride location, then there would be an express bus from that to downtown Austin. The little blue line you see at the top of the map there, that is, well, what if since Hutto just did a transit plan, what if Hutto and Pflugerville, there's an opportunity for a partnership there to share costs and to operate a service from Hutto that stopped in Pflugerville and then went straight down to downtown Austin. This is a standard 40-foot bus, and it goes into downtown Austin, and there's an existing transit mall there that operates on Guadalupe and Vaca downtown.
Andrew?
Yes.
Can we ask questions?
Please, yeah.
Go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so where it intercepts with Hutto.
So right now, as part of the Hutto plan, they're looking at an express service as well from a possible park and ride location off 79 in that area, not too far from the high school. So we were just thinking about these plans regionally and kind of getting out of just the little boxes here. Are there opportunities to work together and partner with some of these surrounding cities? So nothing has been organized or coordinated. We're just saying, since Hutto has a plan that's going down 130, what if there was an opportunity to partner with them?
Okay, so basically, if it did link with Hutto,
Right,
it would be going down 130.
130.
And that would be where you put the station, or the,
That's a good point. It'd probably be one of those locations, either at 45 or Pflugerville Parkway or at Pecan on 130, yeah.
but it would still be, it would be on 130.
Yeah, I would say that's, I mean, you don't want to force the Hutto residents to go all the way to Heatherwild, so yeah, I think that makes sense. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. A large part of the usage would be the elderly or people without transportation.
Well, that's more on scenario 2. They could, but this really is more of a commuter type service. So it would be, because these are just park and ride lots and there's no local connections, you pretty much have to have a vehicle, or you could carpool, or if these were close by bike, you could ride. But yeah, in most cases, it's a park and ride, or what they call kiss and ride, where someone drops you off, and then you just take that in to town.
Okay, so the demographics, basically, there's no breakdown of demographics that I've seen. I'd like to see that, but like you have the elderly or people without transportation that need it, and then you have, like you said, commuter, where people over here work downtown.
So in scenario 2, it gets more to that senior. That's the next scenario. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm thinking,
So let me just kind of going on to what you were just saying though. A lot of communities that have park and ride lots only tend to be suburban communities, and they tend to be people that have cars. And so when we were talking about the growth and all of that growth, and a lot of the growth that's happening east, a lot of single family homes, not necessarily densities, but those type of areas tend to do really well with park and ride. Oftentimes that works out really well, and if they're working downtown.
I guess my concern is why in downtown Austin can be fun, but I really just don't go there very often. Where's transportation plans for like Hutto, Round Rock, Georgetown, Pflugerville to spend our dollars and live and get around in more of that area? Because the elderly and people that can't drive or need that assistance or work, I don't know, we can stay in our area and grow jobs and economics, and they can also go to doctors and go shopping in our area. It doesn't always have to just be downtown.
Sure. Well, let's look at scenario 2, because that might be more what you're talking about. And that's why we have multiple scenarios, because not every scenario is going to cover every type of trip. And so this one offers a little bit more along the lines of what you're asking about. So in addition to the express route from Pflugerville to Austin, there is the purple line. Well, first of all, the black lines are existing Capital Metro services that are going to Tech Ridge. So Tech Ridge right now, the bottom part of the map there, that's a major transfer point right now in the Capital Metro system. There's 7 buses. One of the buses is a Metro Rapid, which is the high frequency, high capacity bus rapid transit service. So this is tying into the Cap Metro system there at Tech Ridge, and then it's operating north on Heatherwild. It makes a deviation to the Travis County office, where there's a number of social services there as well, and then operates east on Pecan up 685, and then turns around at Stonehill. So this is providing that connection from Stonehill to kind of funnel into the system of Capital Metro, and as we'll see, maybe if you go to the next slide real quick, yeah. If you can see that buffer, that kind of purple buffer around there, that's the paratransit zone that we're talking about, that 3/4 mile. So within that area, this is where seniors and persons with disability, that's the curb-to-curb service that would be offered within this as well. So that kind of addresses the senior portion of that as well. And then the flex zone, which is there in the sort of northwest quadrant there, that's also something else that the seniors can take advantage, but it's also a general public. And it's a demand response system as well as a fixed route. It's kind of combined together. And if you go the back one that had the flex zone, maybe it's up to, yeah, there we go. So the flex service basically has a schedule. So every hour would be at the Travis County office, and it ties into that purple route, so there's a transfer opportunity. But anyone that lives within that orange zone there can call ahead and schedule a trip and have curb to curb within that zone, or being dropped off at the Travis County office to feed into the system, to the local system. So that's a coverage based type of service. Yes, sir.
What do you mean by curb to curb?
Curb to curb, well, there's different types of demand response service. Some are door to door, where the driver gets out of off the bus and goes to the door and helps people. The Metro Access, if I'm not mistaken, is a curb to curb, which means that they operate. You call ahead, you schedule a trip. They come up to your basically your driveway, pick you up, and then take you to the front door of HEB or the front door of Walgreens or wherever it is you need to go. So that's curb to curb. Yeah, it's a differentiation between the driver getting off the bus and helping someone versus the driver just coming to your front driveway.
Thank you.
Front door. Sure.
The reason that you have Heatherwild is that the only route to connect with the I guess the transit over Tech Ridge?
Part of it, well, also there's a lot of development occurring on Heatherwild, and some of it's multifamily as well. So we want to tap into that. We want to also get into that area there where Heatherwild and Pecan meet. There's a lot of potential activities for transit there. Not only the Travis County office, but you have the library and the high school, the new development that's going to have the stadium and other types of uses there. And so you're kind of tapping into that and connecting that in with downtown and then to Stonehill and the others. So, but Heatherwild itself, as you get south of Wells Branch, that's Austin, and there is some growth there. But yeah, that's part of it. It's a connection from Tech Ridge up, but there's also potential for ridership as well. Another thing about Heatherwild.
Do you know, because you got schools there also?
There's schools, there's post office, there's some kind of low density offices. Another amazing thing about Heatherwild is there's sidewalks the whole way. So as it develops, it'll be good for transit too at that sort of connection. But because a big part of this is also safety, and we'll get into that a little bit more, and having that safe access to the buses. Any other questions on scenario 2? So scenario 2 is a little bit more of a comprehensive. So you've got the park and ride, and then you've also got the fixed route and the flex. So these are just different service delivery types that are being offered here. And then the last scenario is scenario 3, which is pretty much scenario 2, but with the addition of a Howard Lane express service. So from somewhere, possibly Stonehill, direct service on the tollway to the Metro rail station at Howard Lane. And that would just be a weekday only peak period type service. And they would also utilize a park and ride as well, and it would tie into the fixed routes. You could transfer from the Purple Line and get to Howard Lane station. Okay, next one. So we're going to get a little bit into costs now and ranges of costs, but basically there's sort of these 3 pieces of the plan that we're putting together. There's the operations side. That's where we're looking at how many hours are you operating, the number of buses you're going to need to operate, how often are the buses coming, and getting an idea of that. Once you have that plan, then you start looking at capital. What do I need to operate this? There's got to be poles in the ground with bus stop signs. There's buses to be purchased, possibly benches, possibly a park and ride facility itself, which is a bigger expense than bus stop signs and so forth. And then, not only when you look at the capital plan, there's the pedestrian and bike element too. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's on necessarily Cap Metro or the city, but thinking of it as the community-wide and how you make improvements in that area. Because everyone that rides the bus at some point is a pedestrian, to access that bus. The financial plan, we start looking at the costs for operating it, and that's looking at sort of the cost per mile, cost per hour, and then you look at where's the revenue coming from. So fares are oftentimes a part of it, a smaller part, but as Michelle mentioned, there's also funds from the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and other places as well. So in addition to all that, you start looking at marketing and branding. If that's something, if the city decides to move forward, marketing the system is really a crucial part of the first step. You want to make sure people know that it's out there and how to use the service. So just looking at scenario 1, I wanted to kind of give some basic numbers. This is the park and ride that operates from Pflugerville to downtown Austin. It would operate 9 hours a day, so basically 4.5 hours in the morning, 4.5 hours in the evening. So several trips each way in the morning and evening. The contract is anywhere between $85 to $100 per hour, per revenue hour. And then if you look at the third bullet, there is a match from the FTA. So for capital investments for the buses, for the bus stop signs, the FTA will provide 80% of the cost for that up to a certain amount. And then for the operations side, it's a little bit less. The match is a 40% match from the FTA. And then you see the cost for the smaller buses versus the larger buses. And then we're looking at, for scenario 1, you would need a minimum of 2 buses to operate that service. So here's a breakdown. Scenario 1 again is the park and ride service. You're seeing the top line there is the total range, anywhere from 170,000 per year to 207,000 per year. But then the bottom line is how much after the match from FTA, how much is Pflugerville's share. And so that's sort of the bottom line is what you're kind of looking at there. In scenario 2, if you add in the local and the flex and the paratransit, you get up to 421,000 all the way up to the 600. And then if you add in on scenario 3, the Howard Lane express service, you add on another 200,000 or so for that per year. And then these are the capital costs. You'll notice the ranges here can start at 0 because that means that maybe you use an existing parking lot as your parking ride lot to begin with. Maybe there's a city-owned lot or another lot that you can use. Oftentimes, services in some communities, they'll use an old shopping center or something like that to start it off. And so there may not be any investment there other than maybe a sign or something to let people know. So that's why you're getting the 0 range. And then the 0 range on the vehicles, if you follow in the first row, that means that part of your contract with the operator could be that you're contracting the vehicles too, so you're not paying outright for those vehicles. So that's why you're seeing such wide ranges there. But when you have these wide ranges, it's hard to know where it's actually going to end up. But you can see the high end, when you look at vehicles in scenario 3, you can get all the way up to 2.7 million. That's a one-time cost. It's not every year like operations. Bus stop enhancements, the third one. It's a little bit more modest to get those bus stop signs and poles and maybe a few benches and shelters and so forth. And then you see the total capital and then the local share after the 80% match from FTA. So this is just an example of the importance of, oftentimes you don't think of everything that's involved with the capital side. So you've got a park and ride lot, you've got the middle picture there is the shelter and the benches that could occur at some of the higher ridership stations. You got people on their cell phones waiting for the bus, hanging out. And then the bottom 2 are really all about access for bikes and peds and the trails and so forth. Fares today on Capital Metro, it's $1.25 for the local service, and it's $3.50 per trip per ride on the express service. You can see there's monthly passes as well and savings. And this is just a quick overview of how Capital Metro's fares kind of stack up and compare to peers. And so it's kind of right in line with Houston and San Antonio, but a little bit lower than some of the others like Denver and Dallas and Minneapolis and so forth. But it's probably on the lower end right now. And real quick on the fare side, fares are part of this. I mean, fares are part of the revenue that comes in, but it's, as you probably all know, transit doesn't pay for itself. So fares are a small part. You also depend on the FTA funding. This is coming back full circle. So the benefits of transit, as we're talking about, it's about being multimodal. You've got growth. You need amenities for people who come here. Oftentimes may come from communities that have transit. They're used to riding transit, and this, as you start growing and looking at quality of life and economic development, transit can play a really important role in that, and how you grow in the future. And then lastly is next steps. We're going to finalize our plans. After we get input from this meeting, we'll finalize the plans and submit a draft to the city and to Cap Metro, get comments and finalize those plans, and then put the transit development plan up and possibly move forward to city council. Yes, sir.
I am the king of stupid questions, as some of the people in the room will tell you. But why doesn't the fares pay for the system itself? I pay for my vehicle, I pay for my gas, I pay for my transportation.
Right.
Why do the people that ride the bus pay for the fuel and pay for the cost?
Sure. Well, part of it is,
I mean,
it's a, I think it's also about bridge maintenance and highway maintenance and roadway maintenance. It's for the public good. And so there is,
I pay for that when I buy my gas.
And you pay for, and so that, well, no, not necessarily anymore, but yeah, I mean, part of it is funded through through taxes, but oftentimes if you look at those reports on bridges and roadways, they're all way behind maintenance schedule. And so
that's not my fault. That's
no, I'm just saying, but that would say more, more funding and more taxes. So obviously, any type of transportation is
Okay,
involved with,
okay,
for the
but
public.
why should I have to pay more for somebody else to ride the bus through my taxes, so they can ride the bus while I'm,
Viable option, and
well,
for
they
some,
want it
it's,
all for free anyway, the younger generation.
for some, it's a personal choice. For others, they want to be able to relax on their commute and be able to work while they're on the bus, where they can't be in the stress of congestion. And, you know, in the long run,
And they should pay for that privilege.
and,
Can
and
you-
you know, really outside of Tokyo and maybe a few places in Europe, there are no transit systems that pay for themselves. It's just,
Can you put your slide back up on the expense for scenario one?
sure,
Because that's the park and ride.
right.
We do have the train.
Well, it's just the tech.
What, no.
No, it's like a power station. Power station.
I think it's the next
I've
one.
never known.
Yeah, is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is that, Pflugerville will have to come up with 105 to 124,000, is that correct?
Per year, right.
Per year.
Right.
Okay, and with a total operating cost of 176 to 207, is that correct?
This is the operating cost right here. That's, so the 105 to 124 is the range for the annual operating cost, yeah.
And where does all the money come from, the $1 point whatever million to start it up?
Well, now, just going on, what's your operating cost, where does that come from?
That comes from, well, every city has a different place. I mean, I don't know if you know, it could come from general fund, it could come from other types of funds. Yeah.
Well, no, the reason I'm asking is because there are different financing instruments. I mean, you talked about that before. So I was just wondering whether or not, when you're putting the plan together, is part of the plan discussing how the financing is supposed to occur, or projected financing options?
We look at the FTA funding, Pflugerville, the current allocation based on the census is approximately $261,000 a year.
Mhm.
That's in the FTA funding. There are always other sources of funding. There are transit grants out there right now that we could partner on and apply for. Those grants we didn't factor into this. Right now what's known as the FTA, well, we're estimating fares, but we're just looking at known sources right now.
So, you know, right now, if you're in any transit agency, it could be anywhere in the country, to be a member city to have that provided. So if you're a suburb of Chicago or a suburb of Houston or Dallas or anywhere like that, you would pay in to be a member city and to get that type of service. So that's the 1 cent sales tax that Michelle was talking about. This is an option to where Pflugerville and other communities don't necessarily have to dedicate that 1 cent. But if they're interested and they want to move forward with transit, here's another option to right-size the transit and maybe lower the costs, and it's not necessarily that 1 cent.
And
but it's-
Pflugerville has not, at this point, put their 1 cent in anything.
Right, they're not part of that. So this is an alternative way of possibly beginning a transit type service without having to dedicate that at this point in time. Yes, ma'am.
Well, one of the things that I would, add to the conversation about who's paying for what, and then that versus the social needs and whatnot. There are people who are not getting anywhere in this, even in this little small community.
Right.
And then you have, that are very isolated, and so these services, sometimes we pay for them with a portion of our tax dollars so that our grandparents don't have to depend on us in the middle of the day to get somewhere if they want to go to the senior center and they don't have a ride or things like that. Pflugerville is not at this point in time really you have senior ride service and all of that, but at this point in time, Pflugerville is not providing that kind of option for people who are very isolated.
That's right.
So, and I think when we were talking earlier, we were saying that Brown area was one where you had identified a large senior populations, and that's a lot of the flex for that, just that reason. And then your next map over there with all the big purples and whatnot.
That's
give
part of
those
the,
same kind
that's
of
the
options.
paratrend, right.
So I think that I agree, I pay my way too, but at the same time, there are those who are on very limited incomes and who, you just have to ask yourself, what's your responsibility to helping them get around Pflugerville?
Right.
Well, and all of us will be there one day, right?
Get
close.
Get close.
But, okay,
Yeah.
so,
oh,
growth in the area is really not an issue as far as I can see. Like, we don't need help with growth. So, when you bring a bus system into a community, granted, helping the elderly is a positive, does it raise the standard of living in the area or lower it? Does it raise
Evaluation?
the quality of life or what about crime rates and stuff like that? Or do you have any statistics? 'Cause yeah, some correlations to, the bus areas and how that works and what it.
I
do we
would
enjoy
say
having a
that
nice quality of life?
investment around transit routes is at an all-time high. And it could be bus systems and it can be rail systems. But there's, when we were in Hutto, a big part of that was that they had, in order to get in some certain employers out there, certain employers wanted transit to be able to get their employees that maybe work at call centers or different types of things that need options, that would be part of the equation for them to relocate to Hutto. So from the economic development standpoint, transit is a big attraction. I know that, and I use this example a lot, is the city of Plano and the Dallas areas, they see to get Toyota to move to Plano, they wanted to be LEED certified and they needed all these certain check boxes that they wanted. And Plano just celebrates the transit connections because they know that's how Liberty Mutual's moving there, that's why Toyota's moving there. That's part of the equation because they need to have that connection for their employees.
If you did Georgetown, even, planning to be farther than that, and you kept it north, we could do that here versus downtown also.
Well, part of it is located, in the city of Pflugerville, one of the routes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions here. On this, our local operating cost share, is that factoring in the 1.47 million we're going to need for the shelter?
The shelter, the
parking
parking lot.
lot
No, this
shelter?
is operating only. Capital is
Okay,
something
so
different.
we have to also come up with that up front.
Well, why don't you go to the other slide? So-
Don't we have to do that up front though, to have
So-
a parking lot?
No, well, I was telling you, one of the options for a parking ride could just be using existing
It
lots.
could be, but if
Yeah.
they have to be in agreement with that, I mean, we can't say that, yeah, we'll just use, an existing parking lot. That can, the owners of that parking lot.
True.
And I would be surprised if we can do it for 1.47 million, as hot as in price as the land is around SH 130. It's just, then my
Well,
question
I wanted to follow up on that.
That's just
There is a separate study being conducted right now that's really looking at the parking lot. And we're just sort of putting in numbers as placeholders, but there's a whole separate study to look at the possibility of having a transit center that may also have other sort of uses there as well. That could be, there could be shopping or housing or other, and so that's going to come out at some point in the near future and have a better idea of those costs. We're just trying to put some kind of
I
placeholder.
understand that before I go to the store, I have to know what's in my checking account. I can't operate on thinking,
Sure.
well, I will get Social Security in the middle of the month. I can't be bouncing checks, and
Sure.
so neither can our city. And so I wondered that, and then I was concerned because on these scenarios, they bring it in right downtown Pflugerville.
On Pecan, not on Main.
Ah.
On Pecan.
Right, on the con, but
Right.
I have been behind school buses who can't negotiate the con. And so a bus is going to, that road will not tolerate it, and so it's our responsibility to upkeep the road, right? If the road gets a pothole, we fill it, Capital Metro does it.
It's a TxDOT roadway.
Because I've been over to the lovely park and ride facility over off of Howard, and that road is always being worked on because of the traffic, not only of the cars, but the mass transit has really. And then I have a question about this flex zone. I'm always concerned if somebody has something that they have an open door, then they can get in with bigger equipment later. Because I live next door to Parkfield, and we had buses that came and idled there until they would get ahead of schedule because no one was riding them in our residence. But they had funding and they came down there all the time, even late. And it idled and you smelled all of that going into your yard, and it wasn't a pleasant situation. And that was about, I realized 30 years ago, maybe things had changed, that they would offer free rides to get the ridership up because there wasn't any. So the criminal element came from the criminal part of town, free, robbed our houses and left with their little backpacks, and we were defenseless. So I hate flex zones. I really like things more set in stone because of the bad experience.
Sure,
And
sure.
I mean, Quail Creek's not a place people really thrive to live. It's got a lot of drug problems now.
Real quick, just on the size of the bus, the nature of a flex zone is a smaller bus, so
Right.
that wouldn't evolve into a larger bus, that just wouldn't be a flex zone anymore. But, so
Right.
on that side, it would definitely operate as a smaller bus, but.
Do you stipulate though that it's needy elderly people or
The
something
flex,
like
the
that?
flex zone is general public. The paratransit zone is.
There are not that many, I mean, I live in that area, and I moved here 25 years ago when it was a town of 3,000, but there aren't that many what you would call elderly who don't have parking senior drivers, or that can't get out. I mean, there's a woman on my street that's 94, and she drives everywhere, and she's so perky. I'm not saying that that's the norm, it certainly wouldn't be, we took mother's keys, but it's just not that dense besides the senior centers that are there with seniors. Now, we are an aging population.
Sure.
But
I just think that's a concern, importing crime.
Just a real quick back to the flex zone. The flex zone, the buses wouldn't operate, it's not like they're just circulating around and around and around. It's just, if there's a call, then they will go somewhere, but they're not laying over there. I mean, their point would be over by the tax offices, where that's the fixed stop, so that would be the point of layover, and it would be from housing. So it's really very similar to paratransit service. It's just you schedule your trip ahead of time, and it's already, and all of those people who ride on the flex zone are identified and registered with the service. So they would identify either with the City of Pflugerville, Capital Metro, and be registered, and you would know through the dispatch and what they call, the ride sheets, who's riding at what time and where they're going, and they would have to pay a fare for that service. So it's a little bit different than
I'm not trying to get around that. I'm just saying, once a thing is okay, the door is open. And I don't want a big bus coming down my road when there aren't people riding it. And I don't want parking and just idling and tearing up the road system.
I
because
follow
they do.
buses coming off of Palmer Lane on the, I don't even know what it's called down there, turns into Etowah eventually. McAllen Pass, almost daily. Used to be single buses, now they're, what are they called, tandems?
Yes.
And they're empty, going to Howard Lane, I guess. And now you want them coming up into Pflugerville,
that's not the same bus.
empty.
Well,
And what do we need empty buses in Pflugerville?
Well, I would say that one thing you gotta be careful
And as
with.
somebody's already else mentioned, tearing up our roads that we're gonna have to pay for.
So that wouldn't be the articulated 60-foot
No.
buses. It would be
Well, it doesn't matter, sir. It's still, even a single bus.
But I would say, just to your point, the one thing to think about with the empty bus situation, you gotta think, is it at the end of the line? Have all the people already gotten off the, I mean, there's certain times of day where the buses will be empty, but.
I come up there several times a day.
But it might be at a point of the trip where, especially if it's like an express type trip, if you think about like this Pflugerville express route that we're talking about, it would fill up in Pflugerville at the park and ride station. It would possibly be a full bus or partly a full bus to downtown Austin. When it makes that return trip from downtown Austin back to Pflugerville, in most cases, it would have a lighter load because that's not the direction of the service, but it has to get back up here to pick people up again for the next trip. So sometimes buses appear to be empty, but it's just where you're catching them on the segment of the trip and the type of service that's provided.
You said that you're gonna come up with well, I've got two quick questions. One is the scenario one, as I recall, doesn't necessarily correlate with scenario two in terms of the route,
Why don't you go back to?
whereas scenario 2 and 3 do.
No, it's in a way scenario 2 kind of builds on scenario 1.
Well,
So scenario 1,
you're gonna come up with your report, you said after input, and, is there a priority in terms of which comes first?
well, I think at the end of this, we would put together what's called an implementation plan. So we would say in year 1, you would want to implement this service first, and
I
maybe it's
understand.
multiple services, so
And
that would be
I'm just
part of the
asking
implementation.
for a preview of your preliminary report.
I'm not there yet.
So you haven't even, we know that scenario 3 is after 2.
Scenario 3, I mean, I don't want to talk necessarily about what the direction we're going, because I want to see where everyone else is coming from first, and then, based on that, we want to, have an opportunity then to see what people think and go there from there. But, the idea here is really just to listen, to kind of give the preliminary routing patterns, and then to see what people think. Yes, ma'am?
I would think, if you're just looking for input,
Yeah.
that any routing that is taking clusters of people into downtown is very useful. Because, we're only growing, and Pflugerville is growing east of 130, it's not growing west of 130, we're pretty well built out between here and 35. But it's gonna continue to grow that way, and I'm assuming we're gonna get more business in to prop up our tax base and everything up here along 130, so you're going to continue to have more people that have got to go to work in those buildings, but also that, we're just gonna we're gonna grow. And unfortunately, whether we like Pflugerville to grow, we don't like Pflugerville to grow, I don't really have a dog in that hunt. I have a quality of life, thing, so if we're gonna grow, we have a good quality of life with that growth, which is our city's responsibility to plan for. One of those is that we'd be able to get around to Pflugerville relatively easily. So, but also because so many people do travel 35 who live in Pflugerville, but do like travel and trying to get downtown to work. Those arteries obviously need to be lightened. So I guess what I'm saying is that attention to the fast moving 130, and I don't understand why we don't put everybody over on 130 in this section of the game. There's nobody over there. I drive it all the time because I love it. But 35 is so congested already to try, move that, get that artery going down through there and everything. I'm fine with some little things in between there, but at this stage of the game, honestly, we don't, during the daytime, if you're driving in Pflugerville, there's just not a whole lot going on, except
Sure.
just it goes high peak traffic time. So I don't really know what you've learned from your data about how essential those kinds of routes are.
Well, what we've heard is
I
that.
do like the parking rides along. I'd like to see a parking ride right around that middle one, that little egg shaped one.
Yeah, you should put that on the comment form too. And
Well,
we'll make note of that.
I can tell you why
yeah,
I like that, because it's picking up too far north up there, right at Hutto. I think the Hutto people probably get on at 79, so then you come down a little further into here, and that's where they look eventually, and Trey could probably shoot me for this, but I don't know what I'm talking about, but, they've talked about a new city center there, and so you would be picking up the new city center, and people could get off there, go to dinner, blah, 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 also the growth being out to the east, for the young families and everything,
Sure.
I think that they would utilize that system.
Tie in nicely. Yeah, there was a question over here.
Well, I just wanted to mention, one of the things that I think about is right now gas is cheap. It's already starting to inch its way back up. When gas in Pflugerville, when it popped up $4 a gallon, a whole lot of people had a really hard time being able to get where they need to
Right.
go. And that's one of the big benefits, I think, in transit. is
Sure.
You can have a more constant cost
Right,
to count
right.
on, and it would save you a lot of money.
Yeah. No, okay, I
But
appreciate
would
that.
that cost us more as our ridership? Somebody's gonna pay that expense, and it'll be Pflugerville.
Well, the FTA and federal grants are going to
Yeah,
the
that
federal
is
money
it.
that comes in that handles a lot of it, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you said you had 560 people in the online transit survey, but there's no data of what you found out to share with us, is there?
There is, there's
We
a,
have
I
that.
want to see that, and then.
so all the reports will be posted online and you'll
If you look at your neighbors and the people you shop with, or the people that live in Pflugerville, around Rockefeller, and those places in Georgetown, kind of look at the people that you're talking about. If they're driving an SUV or a Lexus, or, they're driving a decent car, they're not gonna run the bus.
That's
Not
not,
gonna do it.
that's not necessarily true at all.
I up and down. People use that mass transit like crazy. It's got a very-
If you look at park and ride lots across the country, you'll see plenty of Lexus.
Okay, because it would be nice to see some statistics on the actual ridership of Austin.
Anecdotally, I can tell you, for our own park and ride in our current system, we're looking at expanding Lake Light Park and Ride, which is already pretty big, it's about 400 to
already.
Because it's already over, it's almost at capacity, and during special events, it's way over.
Okay, is that also people trying just to get to the subways, where the, what do you call it, metro?
Yeah, no, that is a
Train.
train, that's a train park.
Right, so those are people just kind of going to and from a job.
And, well, that would be, I believe,
That's the point of the.
and not only, and I should amend that, not just the train, but a couple of our express routes also operate out of that park area.
Yes, sir, you have a question?
Just curious, usually these sort of commuter setups are designed to move people from suburban areas to an urban hub for jobs.
Right.
Is there any, has it ever been developed so that you do some of the reverse where folks have a chance to view economic development
Sure.
around the,
No, that's exactly
cluster
right.
area, the parking area that benefits the community from, instead of just taking people out and putting it.
Yeah,
I
that's
used
why I
to-
look with Dell.
Yeah, that could definitely, I mean, that's, as some of these locations possibly develop, and I think even the area right now at Pecan, that's already developing, and if there was a park.
The other comment I would make, I have, my adult children would go out of their way to ride public transportation as opposed to drive. And in this metro area, I am struck by the concentration and congestion that you see, particularly at certain times. And, from an overall perspective, I think we need to do something to impact or reduce the congestion. And the only really good way is to think of ways to move larger numbers of people in a more concentrated fashion. So transit provides you that opportunity. And, my sense is that the generation that's behind mine is much more eager and much more interested in that. In fact, they see that as either a stewardship issue or a quality of life issue or something of that sort.
Right.
I'm more into economic development and convenience,
Sure.
but, that's a different mindset. And I think it is something, so I guess you probably see that too when you're doing your analysis. You're seeing different mindsets, different demographic ages.
Right. I mean, there's
Why
different.
didn't they vote for the transit? Glad they voted down.
Well, they didn't show up to vote because they were too.
It may be that we have, Pflugerville has a higher concentration of the older demographic. It should
Oh,
be.
it's getting younger now.
Well,
Yeah.
it may be with others.
Yeah, no, it's out east of here, so I don't think.
How does this, you said that you're coordinating it with the other plans. How does this coordinate with the North Corridor plan?
Yeah, so this all kind of started out, the North Corridor Plan was done at around 2012. And so we were we updated the service expansion policy and reached out to the communities as the TDPs as sort of the local portion of getting started on that North Corridor Plan. So this is our attempt to sort of start small with that, while bigger plans are going on region-wide to implement Project Connect and to work on other plans. Central Corridor is going on right now. They're just getting started. So while we're doing these, and to your question earlier about service in the northern part of our region, the point is to coordinate all these plans. So all these TDPs are sort of happening all at once or being completed sort of all at once. So I think once they're all done, we could take that bigger picture look based on what is implemented. And the whole point is to make sure that it's a whole coordinated system.
Do you
So,
have like a snapshot of what's approved in the other places already?
well, we're not implementing service yet. The plans were just approved in February this year and then in May. So we're working with the cities just like we would do with Pflugerville to go to that next step to see, what is the priority for implementation. Hutto, the scenarios are the express service and then expansion of a carts route into a flex route since they already have service on 79 with carts. In Buda, it's express service and starting demand response service because they don't have anything like that there, just to sort of assess their needs a little bit more. So there are different local options that we're looking at.
How would an express service, say, take this scenario from point A to downtown, how would that bring economic growth in our area? It's just taking people to their jobs down in Austin.
Well, I think it becomes an amenity for your community to attract the younger folks who are interested in taking transit. We heard a lot at the public meetings that people are interested in a sort of faster way, basically not to drive and sit in the congestion.
As long as they come back here and do the shopping, that's.
I
what
guess
the economic
so.
development
Well, we'll bring them
process.
back.
Because now at least we have places here to shop,
Yes.
where before they were all driving down there to shop.
And that will continue around parking lot areas, you'll continue to have that, there'll be stores and
Sure.
whatnot.
Because if we have jobs north, what you're also gonna do is open a job competition of people coming from downtown.
Well, I think one of the points that was made earlier, which is that, you know, ultimately it's to bring people back up here as well. You know, depending on where the park and ride location is, if there's employment, you know, we talked to the Economic Development Corporation of Pflugerville, and, you know, looking at nodes, and there actually, you know, there could be opportunities to bring people to Pflugerville, and they'd be able to get, you know, right to employment centers and so forth, as well as the park and ride in the other direction. So it can work both ways.
With these three scenarios, then, does that make the northern corridor, MoCan, does that take that off the table?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I think Bocan will be looked at in those long-range plans, possibly in Central Corridor. And so we continue to talk with TxDOT and other agencies about it, of course, the city, about the Mocan corridor and possibilities for that corridor. But that is really outside the range of this plan. We're looking at 3 years. I think Mocan will take a lot longer to get started.
I want to thank you for your interaction with the presentation tonight. We've gone on an hour with this segment. I would like to encourage you to, if you have other questions or comments, is to jot them down or take advantage of the balance of our evening to interact directly with the consultant team. There's been a very diverse discussion. I think it's very valuable to our process. A couple of things I want to highlight as we close that you might think about as you look at the map some more is we're working with Stephanie here with the Goodman Corporation in parallel, because the development of the transit development plan is kind of the enabling piece to look at transit at all. To go after these transit grants through the Federal Transit Administration or other means, we have to have a plan. Whether we stick to that plan as it's originally in its original context as tonight, or we modify it significantly over the next period of time, we have to start somewhere. And so this is that jumping off point, and I hope that's a positive connotation, jumping off point. But for not having a plan, we can't go out and implement anything. We can't work with Capital Metro. We can't go out on our own. So this is kind of step A. And so the transit development plans are required to be, it's a 3-year horizon, but they need to be amended annually. And so what we'll do is work on key implementation steps. The likelihood of us acquiring a bus and putting it into service by this time next year is remote. We're already doing budgets internally, and it's just not going to happen in this cycle. But what we need to set up is what are the realm of possibilities? We have mixed-use developments along Pecan, along 130, short-term and long-term that we're contemplating. And how can we partner with developments to make some things happen that create economic development opportunities, that make it attractive to young people or families without children yet that want that housing opportunity. And so that also opens up grant opportunities. It adds quality of life, enhances job recruitment potential. We attracted North American headquarters and signed the agreement last night for a Danish firm to come to Pflugerville. So the employees they have, and when they relocate from other parts of the country, as many of our residents are, they have their own expectations of good and bad and what they have for how mobility functions. So this is just the first step. And we had to talk about costs because as presented, this is what it costs. And it wouldn't be appropriate to ignore that. So it's all subject to modification based on your input and how we elect to implement it as a community through our elected leadership as well as we move forward. But I want to thank you for your participation tonight, and we'll cut off the formal presentation. Thank y'all for your doing this as well. And please stick around and fill out comment cards. We'll post this information as well as the presentation to the website, so it's available for you to share with others in the community. And as we go forward for interaction with council, we'll certainly post those on agendas and publicize those. But,
And I also want to,
How would you get started on this?
late. But so,
I was going to thank also Taylor Cox, who's helped out a lot in AECom, and Nancy Gates is over there, has done a lot on the public outreach side of AECom.
so thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the open house.
I wanted to comment